I always like to tell artists, when you make an artwork, imagine it living for 1,000 years. And then imagine the institution you want it to live with so that they can help take care of it for all that time.
Collector is a bad word, I think. It's somebody who, has made a lot of money, maybe in, questionable ways, and spends it buying great things to hang on their wall and show to their friends. So I never felt a collector. I was an art lover. When I realized I'm an art lover was when I was 12 and saw a Rubens painting and froze for 2 hours. So museums, you go there because that's where the great art is.
For me, all of my collection, all the works I put together was about my fascination with the human being. Its struggle to create and survive, pursue happiness and success, and leave a mark on this planet. This marvel of the human being is what I tried to express by putting together works by various artists.
So all of the works in this section are thinking about artists that are approaching the body from a lens of abstraction. One of the things I also wanted to do with this exhibition is to experiment with different ways of interpreting the collection.
As collectors, I think we have a responsibility against the artworks and the artists that made them. Again, I realized how good and important it is for the artworks themselves to be understood, documented, preserved. And I think all this analysis and study and that is being done in places like this is what the works deserve.
So this is this incredible Robert Gober sculpture of a leg, a masterpiece from D.'s collection from the early 90s. A kind of concentrated reflection of Dimitris's entire collection in its emphasis on the body and the kind of existential crisis of the body, something that someone like Bob Gober growing up in the 80s at the height of the AIDS crisis would have felt very viscerally.
When this gift came in, it allowed us to really pull in so many international voices to think about the myriad ways in which artists have been wildly creative and experimental in making art. When I look at and look into these works, I'm really interested in the way that all the artists threw the rules about art making out the window. So we could look at a work that's called a sculpture, but in fact, it's a sculpture that explodes form. It explodes what's permitted as material.
I always try to make a collection with a theme, something cohesive. So just by looking at a work, the feeling that comes out, the feeling that punches you is instant. And if something is visceral, it was easy for me to decide which works to collect and which not to collect.
I think our public, what they care about is how are you going to blow my mind? What are you going to make me wonder about? Whose life that I otherwise wouldn't understand, would I understand better? Because our job right now as museums is to create bridges across differing perspectives.
For me, an artwork is powerful if it touches emotions. In that sense, I was never the kind of collector that was looking to meet the artist, because I feel the artist is present in their work.
That it was the end of the political, economical, and social crisis in Greece. And it was, for me, it was like if, you know, when we don't clean very well in our houses and you have all these fluffy things under your sofa or under the chairs, under your bed, you know, when you are fear of, and you don't want to face it. So it's getting bigger and bigger.
You know what I love about this piece? If you look closely, some things are resting on each other, but most things aren't connected.
Yeah.
Right? They're in proximity. So this is like very much for me a curatorial practice. Things in relationship to each other, but they don't have to be bound forever. There's always a possibility of rearranging and moving.
Curators plan to show things to their audience according to their own views. The interpretations of how the collection works are being put in dialogue with other art is one of the most fascinating things that happens in museums of this caliber.
Dimitris's gift expands, evolves, and follows on the MCA's founding premise, which is to show, catalyze, reflect the avant-garde. And Dimitris's collection is representative of groundbreaking examples of artistic production from the 1970s through to the recent past, but with a particular concentration in the 1990s and 2000s. A moment which saw the return to figuration. The beauty of his gift is that it fills gaps, but it also doubles down on strengths in the collection.
Much of my job is really understanding what is in the collection and what relationships can I build between artists, expected and unexpected. Someone can take exactly all these artworks and create an entirely different story. One of the things that Madeline and I always talked about was thinking about our collection as a useful tool, something that really has to be deployed into the world. And it's a tool for our education as institutions too.
One of the things that makes Dimitris's collection so compelling, it resonates with the person who is looking. And the reason is because that person is a body. So there is a ready-made entree into all of the work in Dimitris's gift, because you are human too. We all understand what it means to be human.
So the decision to gift has been within me for quite a while. And it was a continuation of this idea that I'm just safekeeping, I'm a custodian of the creativity of artists. As I'm interested in exposing it to a wider public, I thought that it was better to divide it between established institutions around the world so that the works can have the opportunity to be seen by more people and have more dialogues with the work that are already in the collections of these museums. That is something a private individual cannot do. I know from my business experience that working together is hard. Different institutions have their own mentality, but that's where the fascination is, to learn from each other, to get inspired from one another, and I hope this is what happens between you and the MCA in the years to come.
Dimitris gave his collection to 2 museums to own in partnership. That means twice the scholarship, twice the opportunity to experience the work by the public, half the storage. Not bad. You know, operationally, more people should do it.
I had the opportunity to see the works being handled, and what struck me was the professionalism and the passion. They're not just doing their job. They love the art and the artwork.
There is not anything more from these fluffy things.
We do.
You do.
I kept a lot.
Maybe we could fill it. Maybe we could fill the hole. Maybe we could put there.
That might be.
Maybe like if it was going, it was dropping on the, I don't know.
If you draw a sketch, we could almost think.
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
Dimitris was not afraid to collect works that might fall apart and maybe eventually even disappear. So this is a collector who is thinking about mortality. He is very attuned to the life of the mind and its limits.
I was always an art lover. You look around, you don't just see the artworks, you see people engaging, people feeling. And this is, for me, is the magic of art. I never tried to explain it. It exists in every human being, and it's marvelous.
Are there any works in the collection that aren't in the show that you might see this work standing next to?
I would never curate a show. I curated a collection. I think it has an essence, but I'm glad I don't have to curate a show.